Good morning, this is Thomas from thomasyoungauthor.com. Today is August 26th, it's 6:30 a.m., it's early morning, and I'm recording another video. Yesterday I was not able to record a video because I had early appointments, so my apologies for that, but I will make it up today. Today I want to talk to you a bit more about the gangstalking and to give you like sort of, an overall overview of the experience so that you recognize what it is, and I want to make you also familiar with some of the terminology. And as I said, I mean, much of the gangstalking, it takes place on different levels, but I think on the top level it has something to do with that organized crime network called the gay community. I think it is their preferred method of basically doing away with people. This is how they do it. They don't kill them outright. They use other methods. And it is basically an advanced form of ostracism. That's what it is. These people have to be removed, and preferably they have to be driven into suicide. And when they're, in psychiatric facilities, they can even, they have people suggesting, or even within my family, people suggesting government-assisted suicide, which is a huge program in this country. But I think it must come out of that world. It is every organized crime network, this is the preferred method. This is also not a new method, but you see, because of the sort of smartphones and all the new technology, this method has also become become more advanced, this method of harassment. But also more and more people are lonely, or alone, or don't see a lot of people, and these are also easy targets. If you have sort of a family network, a network of friends around you, it is almost impossible to do. I mean, not impossible, but it's not easy. It's basically how these people get rid of people who are already isolated from people, who are loners, who are for a variety of reasons alone, and this is their way to get rid of them. And as I told you in the video the other day, the people that are the victims of this are being called targeted individual, or targeted individuals, and that is someone selected for a campaign and a coordinated effect of sustained harassment, a sustained harassment campaign. That's what it is. It's organized stalking, and it's an entire network working together and on different levels. I mean, they don't even have to meet anything, but at some point they must, but mostly they do. There is this symbiotic relationships between all sorts of different levels, and often people in your direct surroundings are often implicated. And it's not that the incidents themselves are often scary, but over time you can see certain patterns that repeat. The same things happen over and over again. So these are not isolated incidents. Always this is about repetition. So for example, a lot of times items would disappear, items I would use on a daily basis, kitchen appliances, but also hangers in a clothes, and then all of a sudden, but also things are at some point in your apartment that are not yours, even though you don't let anybody into your apartment. Items that are all of a sudden there, and you think, where does this item come, or this piece of clothing come from? And again, if these were isolated influences, then you think, okay, there must be some other explanation for this. But no, these things keep on repeating. And lately, the stalking that still goes on is through basically social media, when they start sending you messages, sort of, that always also have the same pattern. So with me, they send you nude pictures, they ask you silly questions. Do you find me attractive, this and this and that? Can you send me? And they do that over and constantly and over again. And this is also like a coordinated effort. And this is still going on, and also people that I know do it. So, and therefore I know these people are also implicated. I told you about that German guy, that Tom guy, who was a boyfriend of that guy Guy, who works at the Gay Romeo offices, who's part of the organized crime network. They let you know that they intimidate you, including my ex-boyfriend, by the way. I told you how he did that. Because these people, a lot of these people who do it for others, they are called perps, as in perpetrators. So they do it for others. So there is a hierarchy, and they have to report to people. And I can sort of vaguely identify who those are, but I can never be 100% sure. As with all these things, with almost nothing, you can't be 100% sure. But through the patterns and through all that repetition and through experience, you learn. You can get a sense of what is going on. So for example, the perps. You come to places and then you constantly see the same cars passing by, or you constantly see the same people at some point. But also, what is also, and oftentimes they use illegal immigrants for that. So they would also, part of the intimidation is, for example, so you run into these people, let's say at the gym, and then, for example, they would be, when they get dressed or undressed, they sort of they act very prudish, and they don't want to see anyone see them man or naked, and then they do that for an extended period of time, and then all of a sudden they dance around naked in the locker room, in the showers, and I've seen many variations of such behaviors where there's one behavior for some time, and then they do the exact opposite of that behavior another time. That is also a form of intimidation. This is how they intimidate you. This is how they make you insecure. This is how they make you frightened. Or they would talk, when there are two perps present, they would start talking either in a sort of code language. So they would talk in like the language here, Dutch, and then all of a sudden they would say things to each other that don't make sense. Or they would all of a sudden start talking in a different language, and then they look at you and want to, see how you respond to that. That kind of stuff. But also, and I'm not entirely sure if this is true, but I think it must be to some degree that, they use what they call voice to skull technology, and that is basically that you can. There's technology apparently that you can plant voices in people's heads, or sounds. And I also have this, experience, even when I'm not on substances. So I hear a lot of voices sometimes. Sometimes it's very extreme, but sometimes it is less, and sounds and all that kind of stuff. I'm not sure if this is real, but a lot of people who know a lot of things about this say it's real, and so it's not that I'm crazy that I hear voices. And yeah, I also told you about sometimes waking up when the gangstalking is bad, and then you have like burn wounds, like not severe burn wounds, but small burn wounds, and you think, where does this come from? I didn't cook, I didn't do anything. How can I get a burn wound? Stuff like that. There's also technology for that. And in the past few years, and then there's the thing about, the smearing of people. So that is also something I had to endure a lot, and that I know a lot of people are involved in, especially within my family. All my family members, my close family members, my mother, my two siblings, they engage in this. And they have, but they do this with more people. It's not just me, but they have this. I mean, they have a problem uttering even a truthful sentence. So they basically constantly have to smear people in order for them to get along and all that other stuff. But it is not just a little gossip. I mean, these people always take something that is real, as I told you before, and then they mold it and they form it into something else, and they add things and they exaggerate things, and they always want to look as a victim and as a helper. They help people, and therefore they have to lie, because everything has to fit their image of themselves and their image of you. And that is also why they're so untruthful. But this is not innocent, because even if they are not directly helping the gang stalkers, they are indirectly doing so, and the gang stalkers know this. Because my family was also instrumental in keeping the perps close to me, as I told you, and then they acted as if they didn't know. But I also noticed on other occasions that someone within my family must have tipped people off about things about me, like when the extreme harassment was going on. I told you about that Tom guy calling me and convincing me to become, I don't know, some kind of prostitute. And he always called me in the right moment. So I think someone within my family must have directly or indirectly have tipped him off. But the smearing also has another side. I mean, the reasons behind it, by smearing people, you want to make people aggressive. So I am in the past 10 years, there was a lot of people that were really aggressive towards me, and I wonder, you don't know me, why are you being so aggressive? So that was going on. So sometimes I was really scared. I mean, if people get really become aggressive in your presence, not physically aggressive, but you know what I mean, like really start being really not only rude, but you could, there's a certain vibe coming from, and this goes on a daily basis, where people, for example, would accuse me in the public transportation company here that they were constantly accusing me of not having a valid ticket, although I had a valid ticket. Can you imagine sitting in a bus and they're making a scene out of you being basically not having a valid ticket, and and I had to report them also every time, because if I didn't do that, it would continue the next day and it would get worse and worse and worse. So and you could see within that company, the gang stalking network was very active, because at some point I still do that, but now that problem is resolved, thank God. But that I rather not take public transport than I do, because then I think I don't want to not another scene today. So that was really awful at times. And that is also the kind of intimidation that went on a daily basis. And also the reason, I think I'm also quite confident that this must come out of what I call the organized crime network called the gay community. This is how they get rid of people. I cannot tell you the number of people that I knew a bit, or that I vaguely knew, and then they were my age or a little older, healthy people, perfectly fine, and they either disappeared or they dropped dead and stuff like that. So, and I think it has something to do with that, and with that world and how it is organized. It is basically what they call the gay community. It is run by criminals. I've told you many times this. If you look at the World Pride and the pictures, you know they're posing with the worst criminals, and a lot of gay people find them attractive and alluring, and they think it also cool to be gay and to be part of that criminal world in some way, not even if it's just attending these people's parties. But it is no longer fun if you become the target of such people. and it's also the monitoring is also constant. They're constantly on your phone and your laptop, so they know everything I do on a single basis. They read my emails. I can tell because the oftentimes there is someone else logged into my, for example, my Gmail account. I can see another phone that is not mine. I only have one phone and one laptop, no more. And then you see, and then I have to log that person out. But that is basically constant. They constantly know where you are, what you do. And it is hard to, like, I could say, okay, I don't use my phone any longer. I don't, but I think that also doesn't work. If you, because I think in a way that makes you even more unsafe. If you say, okay, no, I stop using electronic devices as much as I can. I don't know if that is really safe. I have my doubts, but I don't know. Time will tell. Yeah. So now at the moment it's okay. So for a while now it has become better. So it's not that I'm constantly under attack now. So I'm also more relaxed. But yeah, I wanted to give you like a little overview, which I've done, and I will talk about it some more tomorrow morning. Thank you for listening. Have a nice day. Bye bye.